The White House, NBC News, his first report, has now stood up this team of 24 lawyers, legislative aides, communications aides as well right now. The reporting from my colleagues Sahil Kapoor, Monica Alba, and Catherine Doyle. This is all in response to that likely Republican impeachment inquiry into President Biden.
That is a radical left-wing extremist NBC fake news, fake reporter named Peter Alexander. He's a fluffer for the Democrat Party, a bootlick, a Washington-based reporter. And the Biden Justice Department never rests, pursuing the political enemies of the Democratic Party and trying to jail them all. You're on Capitol Hill for January 6th, they're still coming for you. They're still coming with the battering rams and the armored vehicles and the helmets and the rifles, dragging grandmothers out of bed. Gave a decorated Army combat veteran 18 years in prison yesterday. Is that right? 18 years in prison because he shook a fence outside of the Capitol, did not assault a police officer. 18 years, murderers in Washington, D.C., if they catch them, and they don't catch most of them, don't get 18 years for murder. But if you shook a fence outside, then the Gestapo of Joe Biden and Merrick Garland, thank God Almighty, Merrick Garland didn't make it to the Supreme Court. Man, I'm telling you, these people, and they're still pursuing more and more and more. They're going after Elon Musk now, the Department of Justice. Have you seen this? The Department of Justice under Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, going after Elon Musk because it turns out he's got a secret glass house project. It's a secret, building glass house near Austin, Texas. And, it lends itself, of course, to people in glass houses. There's an old saying about that. This is a pretty amazing story going after Elon Musk because he took Twitter away from them. And that was, an explosive, powerful weapon in their arsenal of information dominance. They used it to corrupt the 2020 election in cahoots with the FBI, because they had that Jack Dorsey guy there, Rasputin, with his funny beard. And keep in mind that fascism, according to Benito Mussolini, is a merger of state and corporate power. And we had a merger of the FBI and Twitter, the FBI and Facebook, the FBI and the Washington Post. The list goes on. The Democrat Party and the Washington Post, the Democrat Party and the New York Times, the Democrat Party and CNN. The list goes on. DOJ, SEC, that's the Department of Obstruction of Justice, and the Securities Exchange Commission investigate Tesla over secret glasshouse project. He's developing things. He's the Howard Hughes of our era. And the prosecutors are investigating Tesla's use of funds on a project described internally as a house for Elon Musk. Wait a minute, using funds for a house for Elon Musk? That must be stopped. He's building a house and there might be glass? Oh no, that's got to be stopped. Also, the Department of Obstruction of Justice, I call it the DOOJ, the Dooge. We call it the Dooge. The Department of Obstruction of Justice, they're obstructing justice all over the place. They're anti-justice. They're anti-law and order. They're just amazing, appalling stuff. That's looking at the big screen. That's kind of funny. I'm laughing over there. Manhattan, and it's in Manhattan. Federal prosecutors, plural, are investigating Tesla's use of company funds on a secret project. He owns it. That had been described internally, they're spying on their internal communications, as a house for Chief Executive Elon Musk. Wait a minute, the Chief Executive is building a house? Like the richest man in the world is building it? Can't believe that he's not homeless. He should really be living in a cardboard box, a dumpster. He should be living on the street. People familiar with the matter said, the Wall Street Journal reports, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, very activist, radical, left-wing, anti-American, anti-constitutional extremists, has sought information about personal benefits paid to Musk. He owns the company. How much Tesla spent on the project, which is called a spacious glass structure to be built in the Austin, Texas area. How dare he? And what it was for, the people said. They're investigating. He's building like a structure, and they're investigating him, and because it might be a house. Deutschland über alles. These people, they are just astonishing. Furthermore, they're investigating him because they're saying that the representations of how far a car battery might take you may have been exaggerated. I can tell you they've definitely been exaggerated by the Democrat Party, up and down, all over. Every time they talk about it. Remember we had that lady, where was she from? GM in Lansing, Michigan. They were rolling out an electric car, and a reporter asked, where's the electricity come from? And she said, well, from the wall. We plug it into the building over there, and it comes from the building. And he said, no, where does the electricity for the building come from? And she said, I don't know. And there was a Lansing official there. He was an official, energy official, and said, well, of course, our electricity here comes from coal-burning plants. And so the reporter correctly concluded that the electric car was, in fact, a coal-powered car, like an old steam engine locomotive shoveling coal into the burning belly of the beast. But your Democrat Party, just amazing. The Wall Street Journal was the first to report in July that Tesla board members had investigated whether company resources were misused for the secret effort. Well, he owns the company, doesn't he? Known internally as Project 42. Beware Project 42. And whether Musk was personally involved with his own company. I'm guessing he's probably personally involved with his own company. The outcome of Tesla's internal investigation couldn't be learned. I got to tell you, Securities and Exchange Commission, also another arm of the radical left extremist Biden administration, a very corrupt administration. Securities and Exchange Commission also opened a civil investigation into Project 42 and is seeking similar information from the company, one of the people said, one of them. The SDNY, Southern District New York prosecutor, and SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, investigations are in the early stages, may go on for years and years, and may not lead to formal investigations of wrongdoing. It's just a shakedown, no doubt. They believe that all power comes from the barrel of a gun, as Chairman Mao and members of the Obama administration famously said. So that's pretty amazing stuff. They're also because, under investigation because batteries, you got to look out for a single battery charge. Federal prosecutors also have sought information about the driving range of Tesla electric vehicles. People familiar with the matter said. They always have people familiar with the matter, but they never name them. Why do they never name them? Are they secret people? Or are they really people? Are they AI? Are they Democrats? Why are they concealing their identities? Reuters, the Reuters news agency, reported in July that Tesla had inflated the projected distance its vehicles could travel on a single battery charge. Well, that's the whole point of electric vehicles, the whole big lie. And, and then they're powered by windmills, right? Not by coal-powered plants, like the coal-burning plant on Capitol Hill that powers the U.S. Capitol. But never mind that. That's just amazing. Your Democrat Party. They're extraordinary. So they're abusing power all over the place, as you might expect. It's what they do. And yesterday in Washington, D.C., giving 18 years in prison to an American patriot who served in combat, was awarded the Purple Heart for injuries gotten in combat, but he shook a fence outside the Capitol. And this is, then they charge him with terrorism for shaking a fence. Did not assault a police officer, did not assault a member of Congress, did not break anything in the Capitol. But they charged him with terrorism for shaking the fence and sentenced him to 18 years in prison. 18 years in prison. Just amazing, because they're after their political enemies. And they're using the Justice Department everywhere in order to target their political enemies. Speaking of which, the front page lead story in the Washington Post on the A-sectional upper right corner is another attack, another slanderous attack on Clarence Thomas, Justice Extraordinaire of the United States Supreme Court. Thomas details private jet travel. 3 trips last year in billionaire's plane. Alito discloses university income, gift visit to Rome. Now, here's the thing. The selective reporting, the most insidious power the media has is the power to ignore. And they ignore what all of the Democrats do and have been doing on the Supreme Court for years and years. But pay no attention to any of that because, your Democrat Party doesn't need to answer to anybody. They're as corrupt as any group of miscreants you've ever seen anywhere. Honestly, the Democrat members of the Supreme Court take trips with billionaires all the time on their private planes, to their private islands, to their private estates, they do it all the time. And Ruth, the Gator, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just amazing. These clowns that are after this radical left-wing group that has been assailing Justice Clarence Thomas because they're racists and they're not attacking anybody else, and it's very selective. And then the Washington Post goes along with it. One of the information oligarchs working in the service of the Democrat Party, Jeff Bezos, right? Got that going. But this amazing stuff. And there, again, the Washington Post today, 2 former Proud Boys leaders sentenced to 15-plus years, among the longest terms for January 6th rioters. Now, how many years did they get for trying to tear down the statue of Andrew Jackson in Lafayette Park, and for setting the Church of the Presidents on fire, and for bringing M80s, that's 1/8 of a stick of dynamite, explosive devices, to the White House and Lafayette Park and hurling them at federal officers again and again, injuring more than 180 federal officers in the Democrat Party's siege of the White House that forced the evacuation of the president and the first family to the underground nuclear bunker. How many, the answer is nobody faced any charges. There were initial charges in a few cases. They were all dropped. Nobody faced any jail time, injuring 180 police officers, it was organized and orchestrated, pallets of frozen bottles of water, M80s, which many of you may be familiar with, that are 1/8 of a stick of dynamite, hurling them at the police again and again, setting fire to St. John's Church across from Lafayette Park, the Church of the Presidents. But if you shook a fence, well, then you could get almost 2 decades in penitentiary, because you got this radical extremist U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C., who's jailing the enemies of the Democrat Party. And it is really this close to Nazi Germany. I'm holding my right index finger 1 inch over my right thumb. This close to we're becoming a totalitarian state with the abuses of the justice system and targeting of the political enemies of the Democrat Party, while, of course, allowing the friends of the Democrat Party to skate scot-free with no charges and no jail time. And of course, there are crimes much worse. Our city was demolished by the left. This neighborhood where the radio station is was looted repeatedly. My neighborhood where I live in D.C. was looted repeatedly. Downtown Washington has not recovered from the looting and the violence, the mob violence of the Democrat Party, which went on for weeks in Washington, D.C. Literally hundreds and hundreds of D.C. police officers injured. Literally set fire to the Church of the Presidents, one of the most historic churches in the United States of America. And I'm not aware of a single trial of a single Democrat, because the Democrats have corrupted our country beyond recognition. It's truly extraordinary. They're doing such a great job. And they're also transgender, all of them. I don't know if you know that. Did you know that, Michael? Every one of them. And they're racists, just by the way. They always have been since they were the Confederate States of America. They haven't changed much. Ask Clarence Thomas. And they've destroyed education. The Thomas Jefferson STEM High School in Virginia for years has been ranked number 1 in the country. But the Democrats went in to fix it because they decided there were too many Asians getting in because they do homework. And too many Asians getting in, so they went in and they fixed that. Now Thomas Jefferson has dropped in 1 year from number 1 to number 5 in the country because the Democrats are making it better. How about all those carjackings, all those murders? All right, I know, I'm just scratching the surface here, though. And what do you hear this NBC News reporting? They got 8 sources. 8. 5 was not enough. They didn't trust the first 7. They had to get 8 sources for their big story. Peter Alexander, friend of the Democrat Party, with his big report, because it turns out the Biden White House is standing up a war room mimicking the Bill Clinton impeachment war room. That's coming up. We're at 888-630-9625. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Book by this July 31st for extra savings. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. Once again, so much to get to. What do you hear this NBC stuff? I'm going to play that in this hour for you. The propaganda of the Democrat Party is everywhere. And they're going to try to destroy all their political enemies in combating the impeachment inquiry. That's their strategy. They revealed it to NBC Fake News. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Chip calling from Fredericksburg, Virginia. Chip, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey, Chip.
I appreciate all you've done. I just wanted to tell listeners about, remind them about what happened just after Trump won in 2016 when when Media Matters convened. And that was the pact that was basically agreed to, that the Republican would never win again. And it is from the little wooden signs in people's yards to science is real to the recent indictments. It is all part of that influence operation that was agreed to, planned, and strategized back then. So none of this is surprising given the commitment that David Brock and John Podesta and others made back then to ensure the Republicans would be marginalized through whatever means necessary. So it is an IO like the world has never seen before, non-wartime and wartime. I just wanted to make that reminder to everybody, because I think it sometimes needs to be brought back up as the reason why we see what we see today. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah, you have a background in this field?
Well, I spent 28 years traveling the world and lots of countries, and I've seen the worst. I've seen what happens in countries such as Haiti and other places where corruption is so endemic that nothing functions properly, and we're starting to see that here, and that's what's disappointing in this over the last 7 years.
Yeah. And you start the clock with Barack Obama becoming president. Where do you start the clock?
It's chicken or the egg, Chris, and I believe that it probably started before the Obama administration, but I think it has become a systematic and very insidious threat to our democracy.
Yeah, I believe that you're correct, and in a very, very insidious. Yeah, he was convicted of terrorism, terrorism. Pretty amazing stuff. A U.S. Army veteran yesterday in Washington, D.C. Today's reporting says he was sentenced to 17 years. Yesterday, I believe the reporting was that he had been sentenced to 18 years, but he's been held in solitary confinement for, I believe, more than 30 months. And then a gang of Democrats and Trump haters got together and sentenced Joseph Biggs, who is 39 years old, to 17 years in a penitentiary for his role in the seditious conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election and keep Donald Trump in the White House. What did he actually do? Well, U.S. District Judge Timothy Kelly sentenced another Proud Boy member, Zachary Rehl, to 15 years in prison on Thursday, after he was also convicted of seditious conspiracy. The 51 intelligence officers that signed on to that letter were engaged in a seditious conspiracy. The prosecutor in Atlanta is engaged in a seditious conspiracy with the prosecutor in New York and the prosecutor in Washington, D.C. The special counsel out of New Jersey, David Weiss, Delaware, David Weiss, is engaged in a seditious conspiracy to make sure that Hunter Biden doesn't face any legal consequences for the Biden family's many, many crimes. And talk about seditious conspiracy. So another guy, Zach Real, 15 years in prison on Thursday, also convicted of seditious conspiracy and other things. Prosecutors proposed a 33-year sentence for Joseph Biggs, Joe Biggs, who's from Ormond Beach, Florida. Biggs helped lead Proud Boys at the Capitol, made it inside the Senate chamber, and posted on social media that the warning was a, quote, warning shot, end quote, to the government, according to a sentencing memo from prosecutors. And honestly, you murder people in D.C. and you're not going to get 17 years in prison. You can certainly shoot people without murdering them and not get 17 years in prison. We had 3 teenagers murdered in Washington, D.C. this past weekend, probably have 3 more murdered in D.C. this weekend, and they won't face this kind of vengeful justice. It's quite extraordinary. But Norman Pattis, a lawyer for Joe Biggs and other Proud Boy defendant Zachary Real, argued that for a sentence far below the government recommendation of 33 years, right, and said a decade behind bars would be excessive. That's because it would be. You got to have a Republican president elected next year to start pardoning these people who are being lynched by a corrupt system. Kelly enhanced Biggs' sentence based on a ruling that the crimes constituted terrorism. It's terrorism because they were intended to influence the government. Every lunatic that lays down in traffic is attempting to influence the government. When they attacked the White House and forced the evacuation of President Trump and the first family to the underground bunker, they were attempting to influence the government. When they set St. John's Church on fire, they were attempting to influence it. Every riot from Portland at the Mark Hatfield Courthouse, which went on for about 100 days, burning police stations in Portland and Seattle, these are all intended to influence the government. Every single one of them. And honestly, that makes every one of them an insurrection. Just go ahead and look up insurrection in Merriam-Webster's dictionary. You'll see that every one of these Democrat Party riots, even the looting, are acts of insurrection. Just amazing. Kelly, the judge, enhanced Joe Biggs' sentence based on a ruling that the crimes constituted terrorism. Terrorism, it's terrorism. Now, what did he do? Did he assault a U.S. Capitol police officer? No, he didn't. Did he set the Capitol on fire? No, absolutely not. The judge said he aimed for the sentence to deter future violence. Okay, well, there has been an awful lot more left-wing violence. In fact, most of the people at the Capitol that day doubtless felt they had a green light to commit mob political violence, since the Democrats had been doing it for months and months and months from coast to coast, including in Washington, D.C. On Inauguration Day, the Democrats were attacking people, older couples attending inaugural balls being assaulted by mobs of Democrats. In fact, 4 members of the Proud Boys were stabbed in Washington, D.C., including Enrique Tarrio, who is black and Cuban-American, and his friend, Bevelyn Beatty, who is African-American and with the Proud Boys, and a woman, and she was stabbed. He was stabbed. Nobody was arrested for those stabbing, and 2 other Proud Boys, too, stabbed by Black Lives Matter, but pay no attention to that. Just amazing stuff. Biggs acknowledged to the judge that he, quote, messed up that day, end quote, but he blamed being seduced by the crowd. And the news media is lynching him again today because that's what they do. I know I messed up that day, Biggs told the judge, but I'm not a terrorist. Right? In fact, he served in the United States Army, and he served in Iraq, and he was awarded a Purple Heart for a traumatic brain injury that he suffered in Iraq. 8 years in the Army, Purple Heart, other awards, and now 17 years in the penitentiary because, and you know what they accuse him of? They accuse him of being involved. Now, he did walk into of course, the U.S. Capitol Police were, in many cases, waving people in and welcoming people into the Capitol, and most of the people were being, polite, very polite with the U.S. Capitol. Once they got into the building, there were, and I've said from day one, if you assaulted a police officer, you should be held accountable for assaulting a police officer. Now, I also believe in equal justice under law, inscribed in the relief above the entrance to the United States Supreme Court. So if you assaulted police officers with explosive devices, M80s, which will blow your hand off, if you clutch an M80 in your fist, let the fuse come out between your two middle fingers, and lit it, it would blow your hand off and leave a stump. And Democrats were hurling, and they organized, and they had orchestrated pallets of frozen water bottles and M80s, and they were throwing them at the police outside the White House, and nothing there at all. Biggs tore down a fence. This is the actual news story in USA Today. Charged up scaffolding and was among the first rioters to breach the Capitol, prosecutors said. Biggs entered the building a second time and went to the Senate chamber, prosecutors said. He posted a recording calling January 6th a warning shot to the government and showed how weak they truly are. Okay, I can see getting in trouble for that. I can, but you tore down a fence. And if we're going to have this kind of vengeful Soviet justice, then let's have it for the left-wing rioters that trashed our city. Again, on Inauguration Day, they were burning cars, looting businesses, attacking couples going to inaugural balls, assaulting people. I was down there when this was going on at the inaugural parade and the night before during the inaugural balls and so on. And nobody charged. Nobody charged. The city has been trashed like so many other cities from coast to coast. And we just don't have these kinds of prosecutions for those crimes. Let's go back to the phones, Michael. Let's go back to the telephones. Let's go to Tony calling from Tampa, Florida. Tony, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Thank you, Chris. Let me put it to you this way. I don't blame this that was a criminal tragedy to what happened to those two young men being sentenced to 18, 17 years. A criminal tragedy. But I don't blame this Fidel Castro government that we have in D.C. I blame the American people. The American people put these Democrats in office. The American people are so easily propagandized by the vermin in the media and the Democrats. They're the ones to blame, not the Democrats. We know where they're coming from. They lie, cheat, and steal. I blame the American people for putting these miserable Democrats in office. Let me repeat myself. They're so easily, it's like taking candy from a baby, how easily they are propagandized.
Well, that's certainly the way the Democrat Party sees it. And, I've been talking about their information dominance for a long time, Tony. And from late night TV and Saturday Night Live to The View to MSDNC and CNN and the Washington Post and the New York Times and Twitter and Facebook on the lead up to Election Day. They seek to destroy Elon Musk. They're prosecuting and persecuting Elon Musk now because he took away one of their weapons, and that was Twitter, now X. And we know that the FBI used their power to corrupt Twitter and to corrupt Facebook on the lead up to Election Day in order to corrupt the outcome of the 2020 election. We know this is not even controversial. We know all of this to be true. These are not the words that the FBI would use, but clearly these are the correct words to be used. And the criminal tragedy, you blame the American people and the voters because they've been so easily propagandized. I don't disagree with that, but the left, from college campuses and now coming after the children in grammar school down to kindergarten, the left is here, Tony, and the left is here to take it all because they know that the United States of America is the big prize, and once they take us down, and just smash capitalism and bankrupt us, the Cloward and Piven strategy. And, this is the real international left. And most of them are probably useful idiots, too dumb to understand. Even the people in Congress, like AOC, too dumb to know that she's a useful idiot for the international left. But they've made it chic. They've made it trendy to be a part of the international left. And now, they're coming for the kids, of course, and we've been talking about this for years, and for their genders, and to indoctrinate them, not to educate them. And I've got more news on that today, too. But, Tony, our country has really gone sideways on us, hasn't it?
Chris, without the Democrats, this country would be paradise on earth.
You know, it's pretty much true. I got to tell you. And, you know, they talk about gun violence. Well, I've got a suggestion. Hey, Democrats, stop shooting everybody. Because, you know, the Democrats are fighting to get the vote for everyone in every prison and every jail in the United States because they know that they're filled with Democrat voters who go around shooting people, stealing things, carjacking, looting, engaging in mob violence, torching businesses, you know, being the left. They're the left. It's quite extraordinary. Now, let's see. Tony, thank you. Thank you, buddy. Now, I've got so many stories to get to because they always give me so much stuff. The White House ramps up war room to battle expected GOP impeachment inquiry. And the radical left-wing extremists at MSDNC, they're on the job for the Democrat Party. Let's go. Do we think we have time? I think we got to, if I move quickly. Let's go to NBC News Democrat radical Peter Alexander, who's a bootlick for the Biden White House and the Democrat Party. This morning on MSDNC, on Morning Joke, talking about how he's got the inside skinny from 8 sources, not 7, not 5. 7 wasn't enough. He had to get one more. Hey, you're going to need one more source on this. Peter Alexander, the Biden team ramping up the attacks on their political enemies.
We spoke to 8 sources familiar with this effort.
8.
Right now, they say it's been taking shape for months in the White House counsel's office. They're preparing this sort of vigorous pushback on this impeachment inquiry. They cast it, in effect, as an evidence-free partisan sham that shows the Republican efforts, or I guess penchant for chaos.
Yeah, you guys have looted our cities from coast to coast, injured thousands, billions in damage, murdered dozens in your riots. Evidence-free, other than the more than 150 suspicious activity reports from the Treasury Department, the dozens of LLC front companies, the testimony from the prosecutor in Ukraine, the recordings from the owner of Burisma, the millions and millions of dollars rolling into the Biden family coffers, absolutely evidence-free. He's got 8 sources because 7, they didn't trust the first 7, had to go get an 8th one. Peter Alexander.
One White House aide told us never in modern history has an impeachment been based on no evidence whatsoever.
Right, like that Trump phone call to Ukraine where he asked about the Biden family and the millions coming out of Ukraine because of Burisma. That was grounds for impeachment. We don't have a news media. We have an engorged appendage of the Democrat Party that spews propaganda for the international left, and Peter Alexander is not smart enough to understand that.
White House aides say to us that they spent much of August sort of reviewing past impeachment efforts. Specifically, they are taking note of what happened back in 1998 with President Bill Clinton. They have looked back to that as sort of a template for their efforts to try to push back against the impeachment inquiry.
The template is Bill Clinton, where they trashed the women and smeared and slandered the women. And James Carville said, it's amazing what you turn up when you drag a $100 bill through a trailer park, right? And all the media laughed with them, and then they all had sex with each other in a hot tub because that's what they do.
It was politically beneficial for former President Clinton. I think his approval rating at the time went up to like 73%. Even former President Trump saw his numbers grow during the more recent impeachment proceedings.
They're looking forward to the impeachment because Joe Biden's numbers will go up. And the Clinton program was to smear and slander everyone. And then the news media bootlicks fluffers participated.
One aide told us in the simplest of terms, this is not an evidence-based effort. It is an election-focused effort by Republicans.
That is a classic case of whatever they accuse you of doing is what they are doing themselves. We live in dangerous times, in treacherous times. If we had a news media, we'd live in a very different country, but we don't. We have a gang of bootlicks and fluffers. We call them a news media. They give each other lucite blocks for their work. But they're corrupt people.
We spoke to 8 sources familiar with this effort.
It should be noted that the D.C. prosecutor who is giving 17 years to Army veterans with Purple Hearts because they shook a temporary fence on Capitol Hill and didn't break anything or hit anyone on January 6th on Capitol Hill. that this radical refuses to prosecute 67% of people arrested by the D.C. police and the other police agencies in Washington, D.C. 67 because he wants more murder of young black people mostly, because that's what the left does, right? That's who they are. Just amazing. No prosecution for 67% of crimes in D.C. Let's grab a quick call. We don't have a ton of time, but let's go to Keith calling from Garrisonville, Virginia. Keith, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Keith.
And God bless you for being a great American.
Well, thank you.
I just, this is an observation maybe. Is the Republican National Committee in itself developing a solid, straight, agreed-to platform to attack the Democrats? Or are we kind of still all running in a number of different directions? We need to. This is just my outlook, real quick, to just hit the Democrats everywhere they want to hit us, but not scatter or get thrown in the wind every time that they try to come up with some crazy idea. Do we have a uniform policy to battle the Democrats? I would say no. I would say I don't see any evidence that the Republicans are an organized party at all. And the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, I think is, again, I always have to say it, everybody on the Hill says he's a very nice guy. He is not getting the job done by any stretch of the imagination. We need a brawler. We need a Nicole Malliotakis. We need somebody who's a fighter, who will hold press conferences and pound the table and lay the evidence on the table and make clear the stark contrast between the prosecutions of Republicans versus Democrats. The Democrats looting and rioting for weeks in this city, committing untold damage, injuring literally hundreds and hundreds of police, 180 just outside the White House in Lafayette Park alone, torching the Church of the Presidents, and no prosecutions. And if I were the Speaker of the House, I'd have 100 members of Congress on the steps of the Congress, and I would be shouting at the top of my lungs about the two systems of justice we have in this country.